Hello, everybody. Tim Hughes here. I'm the CEO and co-founder of DLA Ignite. Really excited today. I've got with me Andy Crestodia, and we're going to talk about the 4 things to turbocharge your content. I recently attended a presentation from Andy and was completely blown away. In fact, I think the whole audience were completely blown away, Andy. I immediately grabbed you before you got on your Uber back to your plane and said, you must come on and we must talk. So, Andy, before we go any further, can you just introduce yourself and tell people where they can find you on social and stuff?
Sure. I am the co-founder of Orbit Media Studios. Orbit's a web development digital agency here in Chicago. Orbitmedia.com. I write an article on our blog there once every 2 weeks. My best networks are LinkedIn and Twitter, and anyone is welcome to contact me anytime, Andy at orbitmedia.com, or on social media.
And you're an amazing social person. That you seem to, well, you're on there all the time. Plus, you do a day job. And one of the things that was amazing for us was you came and spent some time with us and talked to us about content. And then when you left, the person, Priscilla McKinney, who's a good friend of ours, stood up and said, he doesn't actually sell content, as it's not what he does as a job. They do web. And it's amazing how you are doing something in effect and you're not selling.
That's right. No one would have been interested in hearing me give a commercial. I'm invited to teach, same as you, same as anyone that you'd invite to come, present somewhere. It's about the audience, of course, as all content. It's about the audience. It's about empathy and putting your audience first, and brand last, or help before hype is what Jim Bear says.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, it was fun. I enjoyed teaching.
So first, the first thing that you need to know about content is to have a strategy.
Yes.
And why do you want to create content?
That's right. And we just started to say that. It's content strategy is about understanding what matters to your audience. Why would they care? If you can't answer that question, why would they care? You're probably making an advertisement. You're not producing an article. You're not giving someone helpful, useful, interesting things. So the foundation, the basics of every content strategy is what is often called the content mission statement. And our template for that, and I do this with friends, and I enjoy it. It's a fun exercise if you like strategy. It's to simply fill in these blanks. Our content, and first I'll say that's everything you put in a social stream, every email you send, every web page you create, every resource, every guide, every podcast, every webinar, your stuff is where audience X gets information Y for benefit Z. If you create that template first, you can't help but think through the interests of your audience, who they are and why they would care. And it immediately sharpens your focus. It saves you time. It creates alignment. It creates focus. You stop wasting time creating stuff that people don't care about. You stop creating stuff that isn't people that you want to reach. And I've done this with dozens of companies, and it's really a fun thing to do. No, it's not web design. It's not what we do as a service, but still, if you're interested in strategy and you like people and you want to teach and be helpful and relevant, it's a lot of fun. Audience X gets information Y for benefit Z.
So I was looking on LinkedIn today, and I saw an article that said company A has product B, and it's great because it's been chosen by Gartner for this, and it's been chosen for Gartner for this. What do you think of that?
Well, that is using evidence first. You're saying, I made something, it's this. It's the "we love us" statement, followed by "someone else loves us" statement. But I didn't hear in there what the value is to the audience. So that is likely missing key information for the majority of visitors. That kind of content and that kind of marketing assumes that there is already problem awareness and solution awareness. And you're talking to someone that is in the decision-making process for which of these options. So that's not exactly content marketing. That's bottom of funnel advertising.
And they understand the jargon, because it's so I use the jargon. It's selling EPM.
Oh, I have no idea what that is.
Exactly right. So
It would have been a wasted dollar on me.
Yeah, absolutely. So whatever that means. So and it was using jargon as well. So so anybody that's looking at a content strategy needs to come up with a why they're doing it, what they need to be looking for. What is the message they're getting over, and I think we talk about a lot about how brands in the past, go back to 1930s, and the reason why you bought a certain breakfast cereal was because they told you, here's the breakfast cereal, and this is in this breakfast cereal, and you'd go, I'm hungry, I need a breakfast cereal, I'll buy that one. But it's not like that anymore, is it?
No, I mean, at that time, there was no access to all the information. You and I both know Mark Schaefer and have read his book, Marketing Rebellion.
Yes.
1930 would have been prior to the first Marketing Rebellion, which is when you could say anything you wanted to, and brands would just lie, bold-faced lie in advertising. Then the second Marketing Rebellion was no more secrets. So you can get all the information now. You can't tell people that this breakfast cereal is going to make you taller or live longer. I mean, we all know that we can research options. And then eventually what doesn't work anymore is just to keep pounding on that brand awareness button, hoping that that creates sales. Because what people really want now is to eat food that they care about. They know the story about it. They know where it's from. People want to feel a connection to things. So the way that decision making has changed is profound. And the major media spends are even sometimes just backfiring. It might be hurting loyalty and to spend $10 million on an ad that says, eat this cereal.
Because if I tell you that these are the best glasses in the world, the first thing that you'll do is go onto the internet and check that out.
I can find every frame, every option, every frame, every price, every shipping time, every material, every story, every locality, every the history of the artisan or the designer or the person down the street who likes the one. What does my friend like? I can find that in 2 seconds. So no, it's not that effective to just, it's top of funnel awareness, especially for B2C brands. Media spends still do make sense. It's just not my expertise. And it's also just not anywhere near my passion.
Yeah. And I think that the story and understanding where people have come from and is important. The classic is the Nike trainer ads. Mm-hmm. Where whether you love or loathe the people, but that's the point. Yeah, and it creates a discussion. It does. And there's a famous. I remember when John Lennon said that said the Beatles were bigger than God, and people went out and basically bought Beatles records to burn them, and they actually sold more records because people were buying them to burn them than they'd actually, sales went up. And obviously he had to then
you walked back a bit. Yeah.
He had to step back and apologize. But the thing is when people were burning trainers, it was creating a discussion and actually people care. And you shop in Whole Foods because you care about something. We have John Lewis and we have Waitrose. You shop in Waitrose because you buy the meat in Waitrose because it's organic. Because if you bought it anywhere else, you would be poisoning your children.
That's right. And you want to show that you care. You want to support a brand that shares your values. These are and so what you see at that macro level, those big brands, and this isn't even most of my clients, but just observing it from a distance. What these brands are doing is deciding that they're going to take a stand and they're going to be for something. You can't be. There's no such thing as thought leadership unless you take a stand and plant a flag and decide that you believe in this and you're against that, and you kind of make an enemy. There's a lot of people who got very upset about Nike's decision to choose Colin Kaepernick as to sponsor him. He's the African American athlete who decided to kneel during the national anthem. Huge controversy. Their market capitalization went up by $2 billion after they made that decision. It's a more valuable company today than it would have been because they show that they care. They believe in something, right? They have values. So, and that has to come from the top. It's a really interesting discussion about whether a brand is willing to be that human and say what they are for and therefore what they're against. By far, the majority of brands who say that they're interested in thought leadership will never take a stand.
Yeah. I having done this now for running our company for 3 years, I mean, we take a stand on something. And I've been chased out of conferences, it's a metaphor for, marketers kind of. So I was at this conference in London, and they actually have posters in the toilets asking people not to put the brochures down the toilets because it blocks them. I still have the picture to this day, and I actually started the presentation with that. And I said, look, marketing's broken, because if you're putting out these things where people are actually just pushing them down the toilet, something's wrong.
Literally pushing them down the toilet.
Yes.
Well, that content template is designed to help that, right? Our content is where audience X, you're talking to, get information Y. What do we talk about? For benefit Z, and it's not to stop up a toilet. It's to give them some utility. There's some value in their life. It forces you to consider it.
So you talked just now about people like Mark Schaefer, and I know that you've just run a conference, and you've got Mark Schaefer to talk. And it's interesting about what you talk about, how you can collaborate with influencers, which is our second point about turbocharging your content. So explain that to us, because influencers sound scary to go and talk to.
Yeah, it's they also sound expensive. I think that a lot of people, when they think of influencer marketing, they think of B2C brands in lifestyle or fashion or travel, and paying someone to mention them on Instagram. I am the farthest away from that strategy. What I believe in, and prior to influencer marketing, we could just call it collaborative content marketing, which is when you're going to publish an article. And rather than just go live with this article, you're going to improve it before it goes live, upgrade the quality by reaching out to an expert and inviting them to contribute, inviting them to give their point of view, and fill your content with experts the same way that a journalist would fill their content with sources.
Yeah.
To do this strategically means to choose people who also have a relevant, similar audience and might later mention you. That gives both social media and search optimization benefits. Getting included in other people's content is the key to search, because links drive relevance or drive authority. So it's basically just PR. If you want to be mentioned in a publication, mention those editors in your publication. If you want to be shared by an influencer, include that influencer in your content and share that. So it's reverse engineering the outcome you're looking for, not by hoping someone will discover you, but rather to include them in your work, their face, their name, their job title, a link to their stuff. First of all, your content's better. Secondly, it's going to get greater reach because you just, you included, an ally in creating content is an ally in promoting content. And then third, it's great for your personal network. It's more fun. It's better for your relationships. It's like all good things in life come from working with people. So I highly recommend it. I would never write an article without including contributor quotes. And I'm just an advocate for formats like the one we're using now. This is an interview, it's a conversation. It's just more fun than two people writing articles alone in a room.
I often get asked by brands to give a quote. And I'm not saying I'm an influencer, because I've just written a blog that says if an influencer says they're an influencer, they're not an influencer.
Yeah.
Because I always think that influence is a bit like the Queen of England. She never needs to introduce herself, does she? Everybody knows who she is. So, Brandwatch will always ask for a quote.
It's great.
And the way it works is that they get a quote in me. But what that does is that validates me for the reader of that article as an expert.
Yep.
And what I want is people is validation that I am an expert. You can argue whether I am or not, but if the more people I have out there, and it takes me 10 minutes to come up with a quote. I'm always happy to do it. And of course, guess what? As soon as an article comes out with me quoting in it, I share it.
Absolutely. There you go. So, and they know that, right?
Yeah.
It just eventually you realize that any article that doesn't have multiple points of view is at a disadvantage. So it will not get it will not have as good a reach. It will not get as many shares. There's tipping points. If you can get 5 people with significant followings to share a piece of content, it then tends to get much greater exposure. So how do you make that happen? Bottom line, if you just write an article and it goes live and no one was expecting it to go live, the number of people expecting your next article to go live should be greater than 0.
Yeah.
You got a problem if that thing goes live and no one knew that it was going to exist prior to it being published. So it's a different way to think about it.
Yeah, Rand Fishkin always said, or was quoted as saying, that before you actually write an article, you need to understand the distribution network. And while that tends to then immediately give people an excuse not to write an article, and I think we need to be frictionless and actually tell people they should be writing articles. I think the distribution of it is important, and actually coming up with and saying, okay, if we get these quotes in it. I did when we spoke during the prep call, I said that I did an interview with Sky News, and there was 2 other people who I think are real influencers. They shared the after the television program we'd shown, we had a video that we could actually put out, and we put that out, and the amount of traffic that basically generated. I mean, you actually said it was what someone would have paid $5,000 to get that sort of traffic, and it generated so much. And working with 2 other influencers as well was just fantastic. Apart from the fact I think they're really great people. And there's a people thing going on, but it's really great, just and working with brands and sharing stuff. It's exciting. If they're exciting people to work with, there are brands that approach me that have been dead boring, who I then turn down. But
and there's people like Mark, who try to lift up interesting people who don't have a big audience.
That's true.
And then there are collaborations that make 0 sense because there's no overlap on topic expertise or audience. There's content. There's roundups that are boring because they're just copy paste for 50 people and no one really reads it. It can be done badly. But what we're describing is organic influencer marketing rather than paid influencer marketing.
Yeah.
When done well, it is huge value. It's like exponential. It's exponential value for the publisher, the editor, the contributors, the readers. There's 0 downside and 0 cost, basically, for these people. It's just a little bit extra time. So the reason it's baffling to me that this isn't like a standard practice.
Yes.
It's also just known as blogger relations. It's known as digital PR. It's known as just online networking. Sometimes it's actually known as social selling, because if you want to include a prospect in your content, you're having a conversation that can lead to opportunity and leads and sales. So the bottom line, I mean, just marketing should never happen alone. It should always include, outsiders. It should be inclusive. It should be collaborative. And in that way, it just has far greater benefits for everybody involved.
So we could go and talk about that for a long time, but the next, the third item is creating original research. Now, I must admit, I'm really bad at this. So tell me where I'm going wrong. Well,
you are in the vast majority. If you're not doing this, most bloggers and content creators do not produce original research, which may partly explain why it's effective, because it's a little bit harder to do or requires more forethought, not necessarily expensive. And there are ways to do it that aren't super time intensive. But the idea is that once done, there is a statistic or soundbite or bit of data on your website, your domain, that is the primary source for that information. And when you do that, the people who talk about this topic, as long as they're aware of it, distribution, to Rand's point, right? Create content with promotion in mind. But if promoted well and people become aware of this statistic, you end up getting cited in other people's content all over the place. You start appearing in the headlines and PowerPoint slides and in the introductions to people's books, because that statistic you created helped other people make their point. It's just contributing to your industry. So one example for us was, how long does a website last? You're trying to find a missing, here's the basic thesis. Find, produce, publish, promote the missing statistic for your industry. So for example, you and I both said, I agreed with your point. People who call themselves influencers are probably not that influential. let's say we found out that these people on LinkedIn put influencer in their title, and then we run them through a tool to find how influential they are according to Analytica or one of these tools.
Yeah, yeah.
But that people call themselves influential. People call themselves influencers are less likely to be influential than these other top accounts. Okay, that would be an interesting statistic that influencer marketers would talk about. You know? So another one we did was, how long does it take to write a blog post? 3 hours or 3 hours and 57 minutes. Our site becomes the source of this information. How much money does a marketing director make? Okay, I gathered that from several sources and found the median and produced that data. So people who talk about these topics, you end up conjuring news. People who talk about these topics inevitably mention you. Those mentions often include links. Links will drive your search rankings. Those mentions are going to create PR opportunities. You're going to get phone calls saying, I'd like to talk to you about this topic on my show.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of the big, and you mentioned Gartner. That's their whole strategy.
I know. I was just about to mention the old Gartner. I mean that one's been going for years. You know, the people. Yeah. The fact that people are 57% of the way through the buying process before they contact a salesperson, and that gets so much discussion and is used in PowerPoints and they produced a really nice infographic, which is great because you just take that and stick it in a PowerPoint.
Yep.
So there's the two, which is the 57%, and the other is that it now takes at least 10 people in a B2B environment to make a decision, and they create a nice graphic and you use it. Bingo! I've been done.
How can you talk about B2B sales cycles without mentioning those things?
No.
And you end up reciting them. We talk about them. They appear everywhere. And that just has done incredible things for their brand. And it's replicatable. So that sounds like, okay, they're big and that, you know, they have this advantage and they've been doing it for a while but this is how those brands became credible.
Yeah.
Why is so the Fortune magazine, they just decided one day, I saw an interview recently with the woman who was part of the original team. Yeah. They just decided to start tracking rich people. The Fortune 100, whatever, Fortune 400 or something. Yeah, the New York Times one day just decided to track the top selling books. So you can do it large scale if you want. You can do it small scale if you want. You know, I saw a study, it's like, how many knickknacks does the average office worker have on their desk?
Yeah.
Get a bunch of people to answer that question. And would that create news? If you pitched that to an editor of the right HR publication, would they take that? Absolutely. It'd be hilarious, right? We'd all click on that. You know, it's the average 4.5. 4.5. The number of silly toys. Yeah, like the goofy, so it can be whimsical, it's creative, but the point is to be original. People say, oh, it's so hard to be original. Not really. No. It's not really that hard. You just have to think about it a little more and stretch yourself a little more. And you know, a month from now, every listener to this show could have a piece of original content on a true data point, an original piece of data on their website.
And when you mention the data point, are you doing things like sending out questionnaires to people, or are you just saying, I'm going to pick? I know people that have done research, and what it is that they have particular. I know somebody who worked at KPMG, and they have particular names of research, and if they basically ask people around the office, there was a particular name for it because they'd get 5 of their colleagues and that would have a particular name. Whereas, you know, I've done stuff when I was at Capgemini. You know, we had we believed that, you know, we needed to get to 250 people to say that was something. Yeah.
Yeah, if you don't get enough people, then it's both less credible and you are less likely to get down to that tiny number of like 1%. 1% of dentists actually, you know, floss 4 times a day or whatever the number is. You get more interesting insights if you get larger data sets. But you don't have to. But what you're trying to create. So this is all for marketing outcomes. We're not doing medical research here or something. You know, statistical significance is kind of, you know, not entirely the point. So I have a friend who does this for clients, and they asked a bunch of delivery drivers, have you ever tasted the food that you've delivered? 57% of delivery drivers said yes. And the headlines, there were 500 links within the first 8 hours The client was panicked because it was going viral.
Yeah.
Like they're eating your fries. So it was huge. It blew up. So it's really if you got into marketing to be creative, then you should be excited about this because it's not formulaic. It's a little bit it requires inspiration and creativity.
I'm inspired. I'm going to do some.
Do it.
I'm committed to it, and I'm doing it on air, so I'm going to do it.
Let's collaborate.
Yeah, we need. Yeah, absolutely. So that's the third one. The fourth one is about updating existing high value content, and I know that you focus on a lot on in your presentation.
Yeah, each one of these could be a whole show, Tim. We could talk about each one of these for an hour. This one changed my thinking. It took me 15 years in digital before I realized, the value of going back. And this is also partly SEO, so you can tell I'm an old school SEO guy. If a URL is live and it's relevant for a topic and it creates some visibility, maybe it's a piece of original research. Companies have mentioned it. It's gotten some links to it. If you're going to repeat that research the next year, which is highly recommended because then you get longitudinal data and you can report a trend, you want to reuse that same URL because rewriting content on the same URL, it gives you a chance to improve the relevance, which is half the SEO battle, while preserving the authority, which is the other half of the SEO battle. So if you update a piece of content, make it a better piece, and don't change the URL because that URL may already be credible within Google. It's indexed and there may be links to it and it has some authority. So once you realize that, you start creating content using URLs that are shorter and simpler and never putting a number in a URL. 7 ways to produce original research. No, my URL is going to just say ways to produce original research because
you'll do 7 ways and then the next way it will be 12 ways. And then
next year I rewrite that article. Now I got some more ideas. My URL would be a mismatch with my headline. So yeah, short, simple URLs, never put a number in a URL. And then you end up later realizing that when you use analytics, specifically acquisition, search console, landing pages report, and you find the articles that almost rank high right now, those are exactly the articles that if you were to rewrite them without changing the URL, you'd get the greatest SEO rankings, traffic benefit with the least effort by rewriting articles that almost rank high now, recycling old URLs, because it might have ranked before, but now new stuff has come out. It's 3 years old. The content keeps coming out on that topic. It's not competing as well because it's not as good an article compared to what's new. So yeah, it's not all marketers do it. It is one of the strongest, according to our blogger survey, it is one of the strongest correlations with results. So I highly recommend going back and rewriting your almost great articles, your almost high ranking articles, your things that used to be top of their class but have kind of fallen out of favor. That's a faster path to greater results than making something new.
So you could take your top articles and go back and go back to influencers and put quotes in them.
Exactly. Contributor quotes, images.
You could go back. You could go back and put original research in them. All is a way of just pushing it back to the top again.
Yep. So that's a great example, Tim. So let's say I've got an article. It's about how to make a great LinkedIn profile. It's not super visible now. Maybe it's for a niche. It's how to make how to make a great LinkedIn profile for consultants. Cool. I've got a device on that. There's it's 15 tips. It's a nice piece. It doesn't rank super high, but it's up there somewhere.
Yeah.
I reach out to you and 6 other people, put your quotes in this article, relaunch it back on the homepage, back at the top of the blog, out there in email. And now you guys are all going to be helping me promote it likely.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a transaction, but you're kind of engaged in it now. You're sort of invested. You're likely to share. That's going to make it visible to many more people.
Yeah.
And we just mentioned that idea about original research piece. If I include a statistic in there, yeah. So it's the idea is that you don't really need 1,000 articles to be successful in content. You need 100 really good ones.
Good. So let me just go back. I was just seeing that there's someone asked. Thank you, Stephen, for your comment. And he has actually asked a question, and the question was 6 out of 7 dwarves are not grumpy.
That's hilarious. That's a great quote.
Thank you, Stephen. So just to go through those again, 4 things. Have a strategy, a why, which is your go through. Come on, Andy. I'm cueing you.
Step 1. Thank you. Step 1 is to make sure that you are strategically aligned with your audience's information needs.
Yeah.
You know that audience gets that information and they care because of this. Audience X gets information Y for benefit Z.
Yeah.
The second tactic we talked about was to make sure that you are collaborating with relevant experts on content. Ideally, people who have a social following, but anyone who's going to make your content better, people you'd like to work with and meet and collaborate. It's fun. Third tactic was to produce something truly original, as in a soundbite, a shareable, linkable soundbite statistic, something that can be made into a visual. Original research will make you the primary source. So few brands are. Be a primary source for some key information in your field. We gave a ton of examples. And the fourth thing was digital ink is never dry. This content is never done. That piece you made, go make it better. That article that you wrote before, go rewrite it. Go recite it. It's the audience forgot all about it. No one's seen that thing in 3 years. Traffic is flat on that piece. Go rewrite that old article because you know more about it now. You're better. The topic has changed. The research has changed. The tools have changed. Your network has changed. Get contributor quotes, statistics, images, answers to questions. Upgrade older content will give you better results faster than writing something new. Those are the 4 specific, practical, tactical, do it tomorrow things that you can do right now to turbocharge your content strategy.
Fantastic. So remind everybody where they can find you.
Orbitmedia.com is where I write an article on that blog every 2 weeks. That's where most of my stuff is. But also there's a book. It's all in this book, actually, Content Chemistry. I always forget to mention it. You can find it anywhere you find books. It's everything I know about content marketing between 2 covers.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you, Andy. Thank you so much for your time. And I appreciate all the insight that you've shared with us. Thank you very much.
My
Have
pleasure.
a good day. Thank you. Bye.